EPA Chief Scott Pruitt is facing some new scrutiny, again, over his foreign travels, most notably a trip to Morocco last year to promote natural gas, something that is not part of the EPA's jurisdiction. The Washington Post reporting, according to 4 people familiar with internal communications, that the trip, which cost taxpayers more than $100,000 for Pruitt, his team, and his security, was partly arranged by a longtime lobbyist friend of Pruitt's, Richard Smotkin, who only months after Pruitt's trip was hired by Morocco's government to promote the kingdom's cultural and economic interests. Recently, Smotkin registered as a foreign agent representing Morocco. He was a lobbyist for 13 years for Comcast, parent company of MSNBC. He did not respond to the Post's request for comment. Legal experts tell the Post it is very unusual for someone outside the U.S. government to help arrange such travel details for the head of a federal agency. And this is the latest in a string of new reports revealing the key role influential outsiders have played in Pruitt's foreign travel. Joining me now is John Kennedy, a former EPA employee who recently retired after more than 30 years on the job. He's also a USA Today opinion contributor who recently wrote an op-ed slamming Pruitt's moves to roll back critical environmental initiatives. Mr. Kennedy, thank you very much for joining us. Tell me your main concern. We've been focusing so much on the ethical controversies involving what Pruitt has been doing that I've been worried, and a lot of my colleagues as well, that we haven't had the bandwidth to look more closely at the deregulation. And that's something you addressed in your op-ed.
Well, first and foremost, the EPA administrator, his job is to protect the health of the American public. And from what I read, what I see, he's doing quite the opposite. I think he's more interested in helping corporate allies gain access to the government as opposed to working on behalf of the American people for cleaner air, water, and reducing toxic substances in our environment.
I know you have written about why this is personal for you. Here you'd worked for years and years on clean air, and now you've got a medical condition where you are very affected by the pollution.
Thank you. I did work 30-plus years at EPA, primarily in air pollution control, although I did work in other areas as well. After I retired, I was diagnosed with an advanced lung condition, and I found during the October wildfires in Northern California, we had heavy smoke in our community, and I had difficulty breathing. And that helped me relate to all the people I've been trying to help for 30-plus years who are compromised in their breathing. And so I found that I do need clean air to breathe. And if I'm not in a clean air environment, I can't. And so there are many, many Americans in the same boat. So, you know, I'm kind of proud for all the work I did to help make our air cleaner.
What are you hearing, if you are, from your former colleagues from inside the agency?
You know, I don't talk with them too much about program issues. Really, it's more just maintaining personal relationships. I have more conversation with colleagues that have retired or former colleagues. We have formed a national organization that, you know, we just try to act as a good resource for external requests from outside groups. So this is being a part of that effort.
And when you look at something like this trip to Morocco, where he missed the flight to Morocco from Paris, so ended up having to spend another day and a half and another night in Paris instead of being in Morocco. He only was in Morocco for 1 day on this 3-day jaunt, really, in an area that was completely outside of his agency's work. How do they defend that?
That's difficult for me to speak to. It does seem that the administrator went outside of the scope of his responsibilities as EPA administrator on an energy trip. In terms of ethical issues surrounding the trip, all I can say is, as a federal employee, we had to take ethics training every year. We all know what waste, fraud, and abuse look like. It's drilled into us. And we know what the consequences are. These are regulations that we follow, that we're obligated or required to follow. So if we break them knowingly, on or off the job, we face discipline and possibly termination. So in my opinion, if all of us as federal employees have to follow these regulations, doesn't it follow that the administrator does too? I mean, he's supposed to set the example. So there are like 12 investigations going on right now with the administrator. I'm confident that the current investigations will reveal the facts and show what's happening or not.
Well, Mr. Kennedy, best to you, and thanks very much for speaking out. I appreciate your coming in. And we'll be right back.
Thank you very much.